Hello, everybody. So today we are going to do a deep dive with Wim. To talk about Wim a little bit, so Wim has been a community member for a long time. He's from Netherlands and he works at a consulting company called All in Data. It's a really good initiative by Wim because we met him at Configuration Management Camp where he presented um on the same topic, which is Katello meets Ansible, and it's really a kind gesture of him to come on to a deep dive and present the same for us. So, Wim, I'm going to leave it up for you now. So here it is, Wim.
Hey, thanks. Um, yeah, like was mentioned, we of at FOSDEM and Config Management Camp, I did a talk about Katello and especially using config management for managing Katello. And I was using foreman-ansible modules as something I stumbled upon, and that really helped me to pretty much use config management workflow for Katello. And I started with Cloud-init, and let's see real quick if I can pull it up. Hey, where do I have it? Sorry, over here. I started with a Cloud-init and the Foreman installer to see if I could easily build up like a test box for Katello, and then see if I could use the Foreman-ansible modules to pretty much take care of all the different resources that are available in Katello. Foreman-ansible modules is just that. It's a plugin, or they are Python scripts for Ansible, and using this, you are it allows you to use Ansible to manage your Katello setup. So, for example, a real simple example would be a foreman location. So in Foreman, you are able to define one or more locations, and then using a playbook with Ansible, you are able to really easily set up a location in a playbook. Now, after discovering Foreman Ansible modules, I noticed one of the developers from the Foreman team also has a repository called Katello Ansible Seeds, and that's kind of like an example of some of the basics you'd like to manage with the Foreman Ansible modules. So in this case, it creates it starts with setting the timeout, then it creates the organization, a product, repositories, etc., etc. After a while, it creates a lifecycle environments, publishes the content views and the version content views actually. And I kind of looked into that to see if I could expand it a little more. And the reason for doing that is kind of because I used to use the Foreman module for Puppet to manage multiple Puppet servers, and this was in an mostly in an Debian-based environment, so Katello was not used there. And last year I switched to another environment where Red Hat and CentOS is used more often. So I started looking in if it was possible to manage a Katello installation with the Puppet module. That proved to be a little bit difficult, and that's why I'm actually very glad to have stumbled upon the Foreman Ansible modules. Now at FOSDEM I did a talk and used let's see where I have it. Used Cloud-init to basically start the bootstrapping of my Katello installation, and that was simply a bash script that launched the Foreman installer. Let's see if I can find it. It's basically over here. So Cloud-init allows you to provide a simple YAML file, and that just executes commands upon boot. So I created a bootstrap script, and then that launched the Foreman installer. And during the last talk at Config Management Camp, I also noticed that forklift is also an option, but I never really looked at it. And after Config Management Camp, I started looking into combining the forklift to manage a Katello installation, and then try to see if it was possible to hand that over to the foreman-ansible modules to take care of the different resources in Katello. So the goal essentially was to manage a Katello installation from a config management perspective, because I've noticed that often resources are managed by hand, and that just irks me a little. So that's a little bit of the background. I was mentioned at the intro, I work for Olin Data, and through Olin Data, I presented at FASTEM and Config Management Camp. And at one of the dinners, I met more people from the foreman team, and so that's basically how the interaction started. And after a while, Greg asked me to do a deep dive. So here we are. I forgot to show one chart. Let's see if I can put it up real quick. Let me see charts, because that shows the current workflow I've set up for this. In the foreman.org documentation, there's a workflow chart. Let's see if I can find it. Cloud. It's called the cloud-based provisioning with Puppet and Cloud-init. This shows all the different systems that are used and the different steps that are happening between them to basically start a new host, in this case via Puppet and Cloud-init. And it was kind of the same I tried to approach with my diagram. So let's see if I can pull it up real quick. And what I ended up with was actually using AWX, which is the upstream version of Ansible Tower, to basically take care of that bootstrap script, because AWX supports a callback. So if you create a new host and that host curls AWX, and AWX has an entry for that specific host, it is able to basically launch a playbook directly to the host that just executed that callback. So let's dive into that a little bit, because that's what I've set up over here. It's to start with. Okay. Let's quickly pull this up. For what I'm about to demo, there are a few requirements. I am using a you can also just to take care of the and I am using LXD mostly because it gives me the Cloud-init provider. But you can use libfit, or you can use other hypervisors as well. Libfit is able to support Cloud-init, but you have to attach a custom disk to it, which is basically emulates a floppy. So this is the workflow. Like I said, in my current setup, I am using GitLab and AWX. They are already pre-configured, and after that, I'm simply booting a host. Well, before that, I create a new entry in AWX for that host, launch my instance. I can prepare a network interface, or just let it assign a DHCP address. I started. During the startup, the curl callback is being called towards AWX. That applies the Katello playbook from forklift, which in turn completely installs Katello. Now, this is difficult to demo because the installation of Katello itself takes about 20 to 30 minutes. Let's see. Oh, I should have some jobs over here which show that, for example, for a complete installation.
Can we just pause for a sec, please? We're having some issues with YouTube just now. It looks like it's not displaying us slides properly. which is unfortunate. It seems to be stuck on Rahul's slide deck. So we're just trying to figure out what is going on there, because obviously people are not seeing what you're showing them, which they're hearing you just fine, but they're not actually seeing you at all.
That's a shame.
So Rahul, could you double check it again, please? Because we're still not seeing the slide deck.
So there is a white box which points to Vim. There is a blue bar which says you're screening and presenting to everyone. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's cool. But right now we are not seeing Wim's screen at all, which tells me that something is not right with the setup of the Hangout. Wait a minute. You have clicked the you've overridden the presenter mode, I think. So if you look at the video strip, yours has a white arrow upwards, while Wim's has a white arrow to the right. That means you've got a different presenter mode and you're overriding his presentation.
Okay.
So can you undo that, please? Because that's what's causing the issue. You might just need to unscreen share and then screen share a second time. No, Wim, you leave your screen sharing, please.
Yeah, sure.
And Rahul, if you could start your screen share again. Okay, now we can see. I'm just waiting to see what's happening on YouTube because it is a little bit lagged. So this is there. You both have the same icon now. This is looking much better now. So okay, Wem, I do apologize. It does look like we haven't had you haven't had your screen for the first sort of 8 minutes or so, which is a bit of a problem. But if you just want to kind of jump back, maybe just to the start of your current little section, and then we can take it from there. I do apologize for that, sure. People viewing on the stream. Always some fun when you work with new stuff.
Exactly. So let's see if we can do a short recap. I was talking about so on the foreman website there is an example workflow of booting or provisioning new systems with Cloud-init, which shows all the different resources and pretty much the steps that are required from 1 to 16 to create a host in using Cloud-init and the foreman. So what I try to approach is pretty much a same type of diagram, only for my installation, which uses AWX and GitLab to, in the end, basically deploy a Katello installation. And in my setup, I am using LXD and AWX and GitLab as well, but that isn't really required. And I just wanted to go over my setup with AWX and GitLab first before getting to the next step of starting a host and actually launch the installation of Katello. So I've already set up AWX locally, and first and foremost, you always create a project. I have a couple over here, and the one that is useful in this case is the GitLab one. And the GitLab one in my case of the project AWX Foreman Forklift is basically a clone of the upstream forklift repository. I've only made a small change to some files, and I'll quickly show them. Oh, they're over here, sorry. So using AWX, it is possible to use Ansible Vault to add secret strings to your playbook. So when you install Katello, it might be useful to supply a password via Ansible. So I've simply added an encrypted file, secrets.yaml, which contains the foreman pass. In my case, the password is just admin1234 with a capital A. But this is the, let's see if we can quickly grab the default Katello playbook. Oh, sorry. No.
Sorry to interrupt you, but can you please increase the font so that everyone can see?
Yeah, sure. Sorry. To 150. Hello. Is this
Thank you.
better?
Yeah, you can see it. Thank you.
Okay, great. So this is the default Katello playbook, and I've made a slightly modified version of that, which specifies the FAS and pins my repository to 120 and for the foreman and 310 for Katello. I'm using LXD for the Katello host, and in my setup, because it's kind of a lab setup, I am not really focused on security or SA Linux, so I'm setting SA Linux state to permissive. This just contains the foreman, just contains the value admin1234, which is encrypted via secrets via Ansible Vault. And then I'm specifying some installer options, which are just regular options of the regular foreman installer binary. And in this case, I'm adding libvirt, OpenSCAP, host groups, and some more stuff. So that's the project in AWX. Then you create a obviously you need credentials and templates, but first I'll go to the template and show that it's quite easy. The credential, I'll get to that in a bit. The credentials are managed in my case by Cloud-init, and forklift vault just contains the password that is needed to unseal the secrets.yaml file. Over here, I'm specifying which playbook I wanna apply to the host that execute this callback, and that's also the reason I'm basically ticking this box, allow provisioning callbacks. So if where normally you can show a pop-up of that callback, but it's over here, sorry. So by running this from Cloud-init during boot up, I am able to basically launch the installation of Katello directly after starting my host. And then you have the credentials, which contain the user that is that's being used to connect, and a private key. And that takes care of pretty much this flow. And after the playbook itself, in my case, takes about 20 to 30 minutes to start up. It's 30 minutes without a squid proxy and 20 minutes if I have my squid proxy running. So let's save some time. And after that, I can prepare my local network for my LXD network for TFTP. That is something that is LXD just runs a DNS mask setup. It's very easy to simply add option 66 and your PXE files. And afterwards, I run foreman-ansible playbooks with a switch called sync repositories or sync repos to take care of all the resources of my Katello installation, and then sync the repositories, create a content view, publish the first content views, and afterwards I am able to create a host. So and then simply the PXE workflow kicks in.
Hey,
with that being said,
I'm sorry to interrupt you again, but a lot of the viewers are not able to see what you're showing because the size is really small.
Still too small.
I highly regret stopping in between, but people can't see. So you're using multiple browsers. If you could do that when you show other screens, please make sure the size is a bit visible.
Yes, sorry, I didn't think about that. That it wasn't shared across the different tabs I've opened. Thanks for reminding. I'll keep an eye on that.
Thank you so much.
Font size. Okay, I at least wrote it down, so I hope I won't forget it. So I hope before I continue, is there any time for questions before I continue, or shall I start with actually booting up this instance, starting at 1, and see if we can pretty much deploy a host through this workflow? Raoul, do you know that? Oh, sorry. Well, then I guess
YouTube usually has a bit of a lag, so you can continue, and if I get any questions, I will push them forward to you.
Yeah, okay, sure. That's fine then. So the first step over here is adding a host to the AWX inventory. So when the callback is when the callback is received, it's actually allowed to run the callback back to the host. So we'll start with that. And my inventory, by the way, because booting it up already takes 20 minutes, and then syncing the repositories takes another 20 to 30. I have prepared a host up front which is fully booted, but I just wanted to show how the initialization of such a host is started. Halfway through, I guess I need to kill the host because I probably also don't have enough resources on my system to run two Katello, full Katello installations on the same machine. So I have added one host before, which is called deep01, and I'll create another one, which is called deep02.lxd. And this is already part of the manually added inventory, which in turn is part of the forklift at Cloud-init template. So over here, this is my terminal. I have a Cloud-init file, and this is the one I use to boot the Deepo1 host. And just quickly going over it, at first it contains a host name and the FQDN. In this case, it also manages the etc host file and updates the packages upon first boot. Because I'm using a proxy locally, a script proxy, let's see running the script proxy over here. I am removing the current contents of the yum repos.d directory and simply write them from scratch and add the proxy to my yum configuration. It just speeds up the booting a little bit, and that's easier for me. Then I create some users. So out of the box, I create the CentOS user, and they contain entries for private keys for the authorized key files. I'm creating a separate user for AWX, because I can. And after that, I am doing some silly stuff with SSHD. This is something that I fork of. I'm creating a custom LXC image, or LXD image actually, and I should have moved this, or should have handled this with building that image instead of running that from Cloud-init. And at the end, I'm running curl data and specifying a key and the job template number and the callback. So it's unfortunate that Cloud-init has a phone home feature, but that does not allow you to, that doesn't allow you to specify any other values. In this case, the key that is being used to authorize that callback, which is the reason I'm using curl. And so let's see if we can copy this one. Basically edit it deep from 2. And the rest is already handled. So I let's see launch. So quickly changing this. So over here, I'm specifying that I want to launch a specific image. This is the container image I've built myself. Then I'm specifying the host name, which is overridden from Cloud-init, but you need to start it with some name. And I am then just simply cutting that entire Cloud-init file. And I am running it as root. So again, there's no real emphasis on security in this setup. Another approach would be, instead of launch, during launch, it would create the image and start it immediately. You could also do an LXD init. That way, the image is not started automatically, but in my case, I want to launch it immediately. So just quickly going back to this scheme. Yeah, the host is added, and I'm about to init this. So it is also possible, if you init a host instead of launch it directly, to specify a custom IP address. In this case, I'm skipping that, but it would be possible. The way to do that would be, let's see, NIF. You attach an Ethernet device basically, and then are able to set an IP address for that. I'll skip that in this case. Yeah, so by launching the instance and it's creating it, and LXD exec deep onto journal CPO. This is also one of the reasons I like using LXD actually, because yeah, just like with a Docker, only you have a pip1 for systemd. You can just run commands from your terminal directly in a container. And yeah, let's just see if I can tail the log file. Okay, so it's installing SA Linux. Let's see. Over here, it is doing that callback to AWX. It's kind of silent, but if I open AWX, it should start. Oh, well. Yeah, but I don't want to save it. Well, that's great, right? So always when you want to demo it, project update failed. I think I know why. Because I had some small issues with my resolving in LXD. So let's see if I can fix that really quick. Projects. Save. And we should be able to just relaunch this failed one. Well, that's a pity. Okay. So that I'm pretty sure at least clone my repository because that worked. I'm gonna see if I can restart my Cloud-init actually, because that's also something that is pretty useful. Bash Cloud-init. What was it? Cloud-init clean min. Yeah, clean min LR allows you to restart your host and simply clean its logs. So by specifying that, it simply reboots the host, starts from scratch again with Cloud-init, and it has already taken care of cloning of that repository. Now let's see if it also is able to start that playbook correctly, and that seems so. Takes a little while probably. And yeah, so yeah, this basically starts up the installation of the Katello playbook from forklift. Only my modified version, which specifies the foreman repository Katello version and some the default password basically, or the foreman pass. Yeah, so this takes a long while. Like I said, I think the previous one that succeeded took close to 24 minutes for applying this playbook, and then additionally 20 to 30 minutes to run the playbook for foreman-ansible-modules. And Yeah, I can have that. We can keep this running for a while, but it doesn't make sense. Well,
Uh,
hopefully, if
so
the system
so
copes. Yeah, sorry.
Wim, so what we can do, so this is a part and parcel of deep dive. So uh, while you were explaining the workflow, we didn't have the video correctly. If you could again explain, yeah, this one. If you could, by the time we have that working, you could probably explain this better again. If
Yeah,
you
sure. Yeah, sure. Um, so yeah, like I mentioned, the reason for creating this diagram was basically to have a brief overview of the different components that are required to make this workflow work for me personally. And what I didn't add over here is GitLab. You could imagine GitLab sitting uh, above this, basically. And the user, yeah, that starts with you. This is the hypervisor. In my case, I'm using LXD just for Cloud-init. The provisioned instance in this case will eventually run Katello. AWX, yeah, is deployed to be able to provision Katello with a Cloud-init callback. And at the end, I have libvirt running simply to show that I'm able to quickly boot up a host after applying the foreman-ansible-modules playbook. So just to go over it from scratch, because forklift is being applied from AWX, a host is required to be added to the AWX inventory. You could probably also use some kind of a wrapper in Cloud-init to add that host during boot up. But in my case, I just did it manually because that's easier in this case. Step 2 would be to init the LXD instance. In this case, in the workflow, I've described it as an init simply because often you probably also want to use either a static lease or prepare static IP address. But for my demo, I just used a dynamic lease. So with init instance, you are able to yeah prepare your new instance basically, and then still make changes to the cloud init configuration. Prepare network interface is where, oh, by the way, I just figured I'll zoom it in because I haven't really added this to Git yet, but I'll take care of that. This is simply a transcribe, I guess, of the steps. Not fully complete, I noticed. Um, so I kind of combined these two steps in the demo by just launching the instance instead of initializing it and then adding a network interface. You could, if you've used AWS before, a network interface is kind of like a separate object you attach to an instance and then add an IP address to that network interface. I've combined one of 2, 3, and 4 in simply just LXC launch instead of LXC init. Well, at this point, the instance is actually booting up. And during startup, you've noticed that it ran curl with let's see if I can pull that template up real quick. So if you create a job template in AWX and tick this box for allow provisioning callbacks, you get a field over here, which contains a simple copy pastable one-liner, which I've added to my Cloud-init run CMD, and that allows hosts that are registered in the inventory of AWX to send a curl request, basically a GET request with a key to AWX. And when AWX receives this, and again the host is part of the inventory, in this case manually added, it simply launches that playbook towards that host that executed that callback. And in that case, it requires the credentials to be able to log into that host. They are added over here simply as, let's see, AWX Cloud. Oh, I have 2 copies of the same one. But they are, yeah, basically just a regular user with sudo rights, and this contains the private key. In my example, I haven't added the password, but yeah, it's disposable anyways. And yeah, that launches that playbook. Let's see what the status of that job is in the meanwhile, by the way. It takes a while. It's still running. Oh, as you can see, it's carrying on. First, it takes care of all the repositories, and then takes care of the installer. And here, the actual installation of the of foreman starts. So while that is running, I guess what also do is tail.f file log foreman. Installer foreman.log, I guess. Yeah. The other one would be Katello.log. It shows you that the installer is simply carrying on, and in the end, it just calls the foreman installer with the options you are able to specify in the playbook. Or if you don't want to edit an existing playbook, you could also simply add those values, basically this stuff to your extra variables in your template. But yeah, I chose to move that to a custom playbook, which is basically a copy of the original Katello one, only with my files added to it, extra variables added to it. And yeah, so after 20 minutes, Katello is up and running. And when Katello is up and running, the next step to able to execute the PXE workflow is prepare the network configuration. And I can take care of that in the meanwhile, probably. So LXC network list. If you install LXC and install LXD and you run an LXD init, it automatically creates a bridge for you. LXC network show. And in my case, I've made a couple of adjustments to the default bridge. Most notably, it's the DNS mode. The normal DNS mode only allows hosts that are started from LXD to receive a record and receive a lease. But if you set this to dynamic, it basically supports dynamic DNS. So if a host in that subnet, in this subnet, starts up and broadcasts as a host name, it is allowed to register itself in DNS mask, and then you can ping it from an LXD container basically. And the other part, LXC edit, it's kind of like, I guess with Cube, you also have it if you want to edit a resource and you run an LXC edit, it simply opens your local editor. And what I've added here is, prepare the LXD network interface of LXD network for TFTP and PXE. And option. So since the network or the resolver basically runs DNS mask, you are able to just add DNS valid DNS mask configuration to raw.dns mask in the configuration. And with DHCP boot and DHCP option 66, I'm able to add the IP address of, in this case, the already booted Katello instance. So let's just add those two. And I am pretty pretty sure that's not the right IP address. In case LXC running is just an alias to simply only list instances with power save running.
So just want to jump in here, Wim. Couple of goes. So first, I just want to mention that we've got about 15 minutes left. So so we're probably not going to see that image building. So it might make, I don't know whether you've got other things prepared that might be worth showing there. I know we've got a whole bunch of image building stuff coming up. But just to clarify for people watching, you're choosing to use LXC and AWX to drive this, but just for my own understanding, make sure I've got the workflow right. Basically, anything that you could choose to use to do the provisioning and the configuration management would work here, right? You're basically just getting it up and running with a bunch of well, you're using Ansible clearly, so you'd have to drive Ansible, but you could just run the playbooks, right? I mean, this is just
definitely.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to make sure I understood that. Okay, cool. That's great. Right, I'll stop interrupting now. I just wanted to clarify that. Like, there's no like dependency on these things. This is just the tooling that you're choosing to use to get the initial image built, right? And then from here on out, it's like driving that entirely automated workflow from within LXC, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. So I've picked AWX specifically for the reason to allow me to schedule these playbooks, because normally I used to use the Puppet of the foreman Puppet module to manage Puppet hosts, and you just have your agent checking in on a regular interval to make sure that the configuration on your box is correct, and that was basically the same approach I wanted to try with Katello. And that's the reason I'm using AWX, basically for the scheduling of the forklift Katello playbook, so I can check it in every couple of hours to make sure that if something was changed manually.
I guess this plays into what you might be about to talk about with the image building, right?
Yeah, and that's so. Yeah, if you can simply run this from your own terminal as well. So foreman repositories version, as you see over here, are those added extra variables, which I've just added to my playbook. And instead of adding them to your playbook, you could also use AWX extra variables to specify those. Yeah, there's no hard dependency on either LXD or AWX. It was just something that was allowed me to simply do this reproducible and pretty fast. That was the reason. And so that takes care of that takes care of all these steps. Then we get to step 8, which is actually applying the foreman-ansible-modules playbook. And my foreman-ansible-modules playbook is kind of this started as a fork of Ako Fink's Katello Ansible seeds and quickly expanded in a long file. So it should probably be refactored for an actual role, but just to show it deep. So YAML. So in my example, I've noticed there are not every resource in AWX, and I've mentioned this at the talks as well. I should open a ticket for that, but I simply haven't found the time for that yet. Not every resource in Katello is currently manageable, but a lot of them are, and I guess I need like 2 or 3 manual actions after running the foreman-ansible-modules playbook to simply be able to deploy hosts correctly with a host group, with a subscription key and a host collection, etc. So just at the start, there's not a real large difference of a big difference besides my start and this from Ako Fink Katello Ansible seeds. Creates a custom product, and then some different environments, DevOps, test, and production. Keys in my example, let's see, keys. Takes care of all the content credentials, which are the GPG keys, repos, yeah, it's all my repositories, and eventually creates a content view of which those repositories are part. So if I enable all of them, the sync would take at least an hour, so I can't do that. And after that, there is a repo sync, which actually runs an asynchronous Ansible command to pull all your existing repositories and then start syncing them simultaneously. So I have an decent laptop, but when this kicks in, my load increases to like 15 or 20. So yeah, if you have too many repositories here, it might crash and burn your machine. After a repository syncing has finished, I want to publish my first content view with all those packages. So I simply create the content view for library to 1.0. Push devil and test to that same lifecycle environment as library, and then promote version 1 to production. So I could have also uncommented this small resource, which would push library devil and test to 2.0 and production to 1.0. I am using a FTP mirror because it's easier. And then the activation keys are being created. So this is something that is currently not working, which is adding the actual subscription to an activation key. That keeps failing for me. It might also be possible that I'm using, because I'm using Python 3.7 locally. It sets up the environments, a domain, subnet, my compute of my libvirt resource, my partitions, users, template, etc., and also adds some snippets which integrates this with Ansible, with my AWX, so they are, the hosts are present pretty much everywhere. You can also sync AWX with Katello pretty easily to get an up-to-date list or inventory of your Katello hosts. And in the end, it creates a Katello host collection. That's, I guess, the only thing. Oh, sorry. Git diff foreman. That's one patch behind, I'm one pull behind, because I'm using an open PR locally, which creates the host collection for me. And this is the step that handles the, let's see, this is pretty much takes care of my entire Katello configuration. Now, it might not be suitable currently for more than one organization, but that's definitely possible. And when that is executed, there are, like I said, 2 or 3 manual steps in between. You create the host. It starts the PXE workflow in my case, and then, it's done. It's part of, all the resources of the Katello installation and the Katello resources are checked into Git and are applied through Ansible, in my case, with a schedule using AWX. And those are basically the broad strokes of this demo here. Let's see how far the installation of the new Deep O2 host is currently at. I think it might take at least 10 more minutes. Looking at the time over here, but I have another one booted.
So, okay, so awesome, by the way. Really nice automation chain. What do you use it for?
What do I use it for?
Other than for fun, obviously. I mean, come on.
That's so that's kind of it's kind of silly, because at when I started looking into foreman-ansible-modules more, I just departed at my client that was using Foreman. So currently, it's mostly for my home environment, for my own private test lab, which is just uses a number of hosts to it's a test environment for me personally. I used to do that with ovirt, switch to LXD for a while, and now I'm booting up some OVIrt again. So um, for me, it was mostly seeing if it was possible to achieve the same config management workflow for Katello that I previously had with Puppet service, which allowed me to simply boot up a new Puppet server on demand and then apply the initial Puppet manifest through Foreman and deploy Puppet hosts with Foreman. And by adding Katello on top, I just wanted to see if I could achieve that same workflow by by adopting the forklift and foreman-ansible modules. So I don't have a real use case like proven in world, but I think it is definitely possible.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Right, well, I'm going to shut up. I'm just looking, right? So. But anyway, for whatever else is left between you two, there's like 5 minutes, right? So.
Yeah. So, like I said, I can't demo the complete initialization of both the forklift playbook and foreman-ansible modules because it simply takes longer than an hour. But what I can do right now is at least run this playbook one more time and see if we can create the host, which basically starts up the next workflow. And I guess that's. No, this is SSH image based. So without further ado, let's see. So I have a couple of server files. Yeah, like I said, I'm using admin1234. So and I'm not verifying SSL. This basically means I'm managing one organization in one location. Hence, it's extendable, but that's something I have to work on. And I've added some Git stuff as well, because in my example, I also try to use R10K every so often, but I'll keep that out of it right now. So Ansible playbook C. And I guess I can add a repository one. Let's see if I can pull up the foreman production log at the same time, or one. And what happens over here is it pulls those locally on my disk instead of on the Katello server itself, and then uses those to create content credentials in Katello. After fetching all the keys, it provisions all these repositories. Let's see, products, custom. Sometimes it's okay, here they are. And after creation of all the repositories, if I would specify the let's see, sync. If I would run it like this, it would also run a sync job of all those repositories before actually starting the promotion of content view 1.0 to the library. So after creating all those repos, it creates content view, and in my case, it pushes that to every environment I've specified. It also creates an FTP mirror in my example, the client activation key. So this is one I already added manually to the host. If I would run this again, that's something to create an issue for, and it's all my my templates. So now we should have a host collection over here. Yes, we don't have a host group yet, because unfortunately the host group can't be created through foreman-ansible's modules. So I'll quickly add that to library. CV1. Oh. And I noticed we have like a couple of minutes left, so I hope I'll be able to make this on time. FTP, yes. And location, organization, and we'll add a key to it. Hop. Now, and let's see if we can use that to quickly create a new host. Next files. Hop. Yep, that seems fine. Yeah, this is something I should handle, but okay. Everything is set up correctly over here. The interfaces are, yes, fixed. I'm not using any public classes right now. My parameters seem correct. So let's see if I can book that host. Should be. That's it. So if we go to the console, it always errors. It should start. Right, yeah. Copy. Yes. Oh. Yes. Fast. Reload this screen. And I guess, yeah, it always takes a little while. Oh, well, great. But I don't have enough time to look into this. But the gist would be, yeah, pretty much the last step of the workflow is just start the regular PXE workflow, have the host be created, and then you're done, and you have a your complete setup of AWX and all the resource of Katello, and all the Katello resources managed via Ansible through forklift and foreman-ansible-modules. So
Great. I
look
think,
into it if you haven't used it before.
yeah, it sounds great. Like, I was very fascinated to see the host created, and then the entire Pixie flow starts as usual. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess guys can actually implement it, like try it out or something like that.
Yeah,
It was great talking to you, Wim. So to end this up, this was Wim with us today at the deep dive, and he clearly showed us how Katello meets Ansible. So if you guys have any questions, you can obviously get to Wim, or you could post your questions to hashtag the foreman on any IRC channel, and or you could catch us on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Take care.
yeah. If you have any questions, I'm always in the format channel as Ire, IHRA. So if you have any questions about it, I'll be happy to help you.
Awesome. Cool.
Oh, stop sharing then, I guess.